Another edition of Riding Home. Dean Legge and Matt DeBary. Martin Luther King Jr. Day in 2020. Matt, big junior weekend for the Dogs over the weekend. I'm just going to let you start. Obviously, there are a lot of big visitors.
Yeah, I put it in a big visitor list on Dog Post a few days ago, but multiple five-star prospects were in town, all in the 2021 class for Georgia's Junior Day. It all starts at quarterback, as we know. Brock Vandegrift, five-star pro-style quarterback who can run a little bit, one of the top 10 overall players in the country, from right outside of Athens, Prince Avenue Christian. He was on campus for the Junior Day visit, and I believe he's back there today, obviously with no school being Martin Luther King Jr. Day. He was back there again with his family. His father was not on the visit with him on Saturday. So now that the whole family's back in town, I think they made another trip to Athens today. But top Georgia target. I think Georgia leads right now. I think Brock wants to make a commitment sometime this spring, early summer, probably at the latest, definitely before his senior season. And if you're a Georgia fan, you have to like where the Bulldogs sit with him right now. Decommitted from Oklahoma, obviously, due to location. And if location is a big deal to him, which it looks like it is, then you have to like Georgia's chances here. So, but he's another guy that these recruits love. They know all about Brock and have for a while. And one of those guys is five-star tackle Amarius Mims. He said after Sam Pittman left, it was Alabama, LSU at the top, but the kid's been to Georgia over 10 times since, as a recruit. He was back there on Saturday. I think it's going to be really tough for anyone to beat Georgia in the end here, but he's at Tennessee today, was at Georgia, obviously on Saturday. Major target, one of the top, maybe the top offensive tackle prospect in the country. So those are the two big in-state five stars. You also had two five-star cornerbacks, Tony Grimes and Isaiah Johnson, two guys that I was able to watch at a 7-on-7 tournament this summer down in Atlanta. And they're the real deal. Excuse me. I talked to one of their trainers, someone who was on the visit with them this morning, and he went on and on about how well organized the visit was. And he talked on about Kirby Smart and the whole staff. And they rolled out the red carpet for both Grimes and Johnson. But he made a point to tell me that everything was structured well as it terms to the visits and what they do, what they see, where they go. He said it was very structured, very organized. And they didn't just pitch, hey, you can come in here and start immediately. They said, we want you to come in, work for the job. And Kirby Smart was with them the whole time. And I think they like that. The head coach, Kirby Smart, former DB, works with the DBs constantly in practice. We've seen that, not only in spring practices, but in the fall as well. So I think that's a major selling point to these kids. And again, those are two out-of-state guys who made the trip down. And I think Georgia sits in a really good spot for both of them. And then you have some other guys who picked up offers. The Buford running back picked up an offer. Cody Brown from Parkview was in town. They offered a kid out of Elbert County. The names are escaping me right now. It's all over on Dog Post, though. But Mario Williams, four-star wide receiver out of Plant City down in Florida. I just published a story about him, and his quote was, "I could go crazy in this new Georgia offense with this new coordinator." So that kind of raised my eyebrows there a little bit. And the close source next to him told me that Georgia's very much in the mix with him now, even though they were not in his original top five. So lots of talent, a lot of in-state talent, but of course a few out-of-state targets made their way on campus too. So overall, really big deal. Lots of five stars and lots of in-state targets. I mean, Smail Mondin out of Paulding County, Barrett Carter, Jordan Hancock, two defenders out of North Gwinnett. Just a lot of in-state guys in this 21 class, and of course, a few more five stars that I just talked about.
Well, that was a lot to digest for sure. And when you start thinking about Georgia with a new offensive coordinator, I don't know what's going to happen with James Coley, excuse me. But it sure does seem like there's a lot of excitement with Todd Moken coming in. It's a new selling point for Georgia with recruits.
No doubt, especially these wide receivers. They look at this guy Monken coming in, who he's got that air raid style type of offense. I don't know if you can exactly call it that, but they know that Georgia's probably going to throw the ball around a little more. So if you're Brock Vandegrift, who already had Georgia probably as his leader, and he sees this new offensive, mind coming in, wanting to throw the football. Yeah, you've got to be excited if you're Brock a little bit, and that has to help Georgia's chances there. And of course, Mario Williams told me he was able to speak with the offensive coordinator, loved him, knew he could do big things. So it's exciting not only for Georgia fans, but for these recruits too, who are looking at Georgia maybe in a different light instead of, RBU, run the ball, pound the football, and eat up the clock that way, which is what Georgia's known for. Now they've got a guy in running the offense who wants to throw it around a little bit more. So it definitely has a lot of recruits' attention, especially on the offensive side of the ball.
These junior days really are the place setter. They're not necessarily the starting point, but they get you to where you can maneuver moving forward, so to speak. I mean, a lot of these guys they've already had contact with. They've had contact with Brock Vandegrift for 2 years. But when you look at this class, I mean, they're going to have 17 seniors in 2020 on the field, which means that lines up to where you'd probably take between 24 and 25 kids in the 2022 class. They've only got a couple of kids committed right now. What should people expect in this class? When you start talking about, they're going to take a quarterback. I mean, obviously it looks like Vandegrift. Running back, I think they're going to lose Zamir after this season. So I would imagine they'll take 1 or 2 running backs. Receivers, they just signed 4. They signed a very good tight end. They just signed 6 offensive linemen, 3 defensive linemen, 1 linebacker, 3 DBs, and 1 specialist. That's just the kids who are coming in so far. There's at least 3 other kids probably that will make their way to Athens. What do you think that they're looking at? What do they need pretty bad now that they've signed this 2020 class?
I think 2021 will be defense heavy. A few linebackers, and a few of those guys could be in-state guys, like Barrett Carter out of North Gwinnett, Smale Mondin out of Paulding County. I think both of those guys are takes for Georgia. And we've talked about it a long time. Georgia can go anywhere they want in recruiting to get a kid. They don't have to settle for a 4-star from Georgia if they feel like they can get a 5-star from Utah or California or wherever. But I do think you might be able to see more commitments in-state than in the 2020 and 2019 class. But I do think it's going to be a big class, like you said, very defensive heavy. And they're going to get their share of out-of-state guys. They always do. But I do think that they could do pretty well in-state, especially towards the top. Brock Vandegrift, Amarius Mims, Micah Morris, Terrence Ferguson. Those are all, 4 of the top 5 players in the state. And I think if Kirby wants to clean up and lock down the state like he did in 17 and 18, there's a very good chance of that happening. They could stay in-state on the offensive line. They might just take 3 offensive linemen in this class since they took so many in 2020. And all 3 of those guys could be in-state kids, not because they're local or anything like that. It's because they're really good. And
Jones and Ratledge were top, 50 prospects, give or take a little bit there, and they were in-state kids too. I mean, I think that in the 2000s, you would talk about, hey, can you control your state? Whether you were Texas or Florida or Georgia, can you control your state? That's not really. I mean, that's pre 9/11 thinking, for lack of a better term. That's not how things work anymore. Recruiting is much more like robbing a bank. You rob banks. Well, why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is. You wouldn't rob a Wendy's. You would rather go to a place that there's some other than there's just straight up it's only cash. You don't want any hamburgers or French fries.
It was funny because when Kirby was hired, everyone wanted him to lock the state down. Don't let any of the top kids in state get out. And he absolutely did that, finishing strong in that 2016 class and then going into 17 and 18 and so on. Now it's to where he's going all over the place, and he's really successful at doing that. So he can lock down the state when he wants, but you're right. He's got to get the best players no matter where they are. And I think he's going to do that again in this 2021 class. Again, 2020 is not done yet. Still a few spots out there, still some drama and rumors out there that we're dealing with. But as it relates to this past weekend's junior day, that was just the rising seniors and still juniors. So in that class, I think Georgia could stay a little more in state because I mean they're in a really good spot for pretty much every player, no matter what their position is in Georgia right now, because a lot of them were on campus. But James Williams, a 5-star safety from Miami, is a big target, and I think just overall they're going to bring in a number of linebackers. I think they're going to try to bring in a good bit of defensive backs. I think they might only sign just 3 or 4 in 2020. So guys like David Daniel, 5-star James Williams, 5-star Tony Grimes, 5-star Isaiah Johnson, and all these guys have Georgia towards the top or at the top of their list. So right now, I mean, Kirby's got a really good start of that 21 class. There's no doubt about it, and we saw a lot of it, and I'm hearing a lot of it from today. I wrote 2 recruiting updates, visit updates already. I've got a couple more in the system, and I'm going to keep pumping them out. A lot of these kids, had a great time, and they enjoy talking about their visit, at least to me.
Well, I'll say this: I think Mims and Vandergriff are the most important players in this class. Period. And they both, although they're not yet committed to Georgia, I would be surprised if both of them at this point didn't wind up at Georgia. There's a lot to go in recruiting, and there's a lot for me to expand on in that statement. But we'll leave that for another time. Make sure to click to subscribe. Make sure to click this next video talking about Carson Beck up at the top there. You can check out what he looks like. Dean Legge, Matt DeBary. Join us tomorrow for another edition of Riding Home.